going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be analyzing the match between Chelsea and Liverpool in the English Premier League. And before we get into the tactics behind the match, check out both my books. They're online on Amazon and there's links in the description below. Also, be sure to check out Keyframe. It's how I'm making this video. Now let's get right into the tactics behind the match between Chelsea and Liverpool, which ended at a score of 2-2. And my apologies if there is some background noise. I'm making this video from an airport, so apologies in advance for that. But with Chelsea's build-up shape, they've built out of the back with 3 central defenders, as they usually do. Rudiger had his usual tendencies to move into the wider area. The double pivot of Kovacic and Kanté had good flexibility to then remain in the central corridor or move into the half space, whether that be Kanté jumping or if Kovacic had the rare moments of jumping through the half space. Liverpool pressed in their 4-3-3 in their usual pressing system, with Salah pressing from out to in, blocking off the pass to Rudiger, and then pressing the most central defender to then try and force a pressing trap to go into a more central position where they can then have a stronger position to win the ball and in a more dangerous area. Liverpool covered their press with their asymmetric midfield, with a wide central midfielder jumping to then pressure the double pivot, who could not be covered by Diogo Jota's cover shadow. Then the wingbacks were then left free because of Chelsea's front three ability to pin the back four from Liverpool, leaving the wingbacks for Chelsea relatively free, unless Liverpool went and defended with a numerical superiority. Now in this instance, we see more fluidity from the 2 holding midfielders of Chelsea, with Kanté able to go into the half space and go higher up the field. This was able to pin the midfielders of Liverpool and make him a harder time to deal with the players between the lines. Kovacic was usually the player who stayed out and out as the holding midfielder. When Diogo Jota would go and press, the compactness of Liverpool around Kovacic would usually set the central pressing trap from Chelsea, who with their back 3 were able to make strong passing connections from the wide central defenders into Kovacic, but didn't access this due to the pressing trap and the over compactness of Liverpool's mid-block. An important note to make is the vertical partnership from Diogo Jota and one of the midfielders. So when Jota goes to press, or if they have 2 holding midfielders, they'll have a Liverpool player jump, then make up for this ability to not be able to control both players when Jota jumps. So here Jordan Henderson jumps to make up for this and control the space in the central areas. Now we start to see the 4-man midfield of Chelsea with an asymmetric midfield box, with then Kai Havertz as the lone forward. Kai Havertz and his qualities play more of an attacking midfield role, but playing off the 2 central defenders, giving them at times a 5-man midfield and 3 players to occupy the space between the lines. But with Liverpool's high line, the roles of these Chelsea attacking midfielders often were to run in behind and create space either between the lines or access the space in behind Liverpool's defensive line. Now when the ball was in the central area with Chelsea's central defenders, we have a very spatially oriented Liverpool side in their mid-block, controlling the double pivot and the space between the lines through spatial orientation rather than a more man-marking system. And then as we see, the wingbacks are the players usually left free of the lack of danger through the wide areas that lie with the wingbacks. Liverpool maintain their high line, and when the press is initiated, we start to see more staggering from the midfield and more man orientation principles. So Jota, starting his press, forces Jordan Henderson to go and jump to the double pivot, and while this happens, there's more pressure created around the ball, but more pressure around the ball means more space between the lines, or with the high line of Liverpool, we have much more space in behind for Chelsea players, especially the attacking midfielders, to run in and jump and advance, or push back the back line of Liverpool to then find the free players via the wingbacks in the wide areas. Liverpool built from the back using their goalkeeper, splitting their 2 central defenders, with nothing different with how they usually build from the back. Fabinho was the out-and-out holding midfielder, but Milner had tendencies to drop through the left half space and favor drifting out into the wide area, giving Tsimikas and Mane more freedom to invert or go higher up the field. Chelsea started their press with an asymmetric front 3, which saw their right-sided winger or forward start deeper, and then when the ball was played, he would then use his cover shadow to block access to the fullback of Tsimikas, allowing him to press more narrow And the asymmetry came with the role of Alonso on this left-hand side to press the fullback of Trent Alexander-Arnold, where on the right side, their winger of Chelsea was required to have this dual role to cover the fullback and press the central defender into a narrow position. Then the other two forwards remain narrow in the central positions to prevent access to the holding midfielders and James Milner dropping, with Conte advancing using man orientation to further prevent the pass into the central corridor. Now we have Liverpool's build-up shape again, with then Trent Alexander-Arnold taking up a more narrow position just a few yards off the sideline, allowing him to also invert quite often when the ball would go into the wide area, giving Mo Salah the ability to be isolated and use his 1v1 situation abilities to progress past the Chelsea defenders. James Milner then takes up a wider role, allowing him to drop deeper and in the wide area, allowing Tsimikas to jump higher or giving Mane more space higher up the field against the Chelsea defenders. Now we see quite clearly the Chelsea asymmetric front three press with Mason Mount or Christian Pulisic in this situation starting deeper to then be able to go and press the central defender, curving his run to blocking passes from into central areas, and while the other two stay higher up the field, remaining close to the holding midfielder, but also having access to go and press the first line of build-up. Now in the second half, after some substitutions and tactical changes were made, we saw Chelsea go into a 5-2-3, or a more similar structure to a 5-2-3 rather than a 5-3-2, while Liverpool attacked with their normal fluidity of Mane, Jota, and Salah, able to then vary the ways they occupy the central corridors and create isolation for Mo Salah. Mo Salah had the tendency to stay wider, except in the final third, where he would then make inverted runs, which is how he scored his goal, while Mane and Jota would then vary between pinning and dropping off to receive the ball. Trent Alexander-Arnold in their back line played a much more narrow role, where Tsimikas would able then to go higher up the field, where Jordan Henderson occupied space between the lines, where Salah would normally be if he were to invert, allowing these two players to have positional interchanges quite often throughout the match. Then at the base of this was Fabinho and James Milner, who would then come wider, allowing Tsimikas to take advantage of the space in the wide area. Now we see against Chelsea's low block, we have Mo Salah coming narrow with Mane occupying the space between the lines against a very tight low block from Chelsea. Tsimikas creating a height and width, allowing Mane to invert. Naby Keita comes on as a more offensive option, pairing with Fabinho and Oxlade-Chamberlain, or Fabinho and Jordan Henderson, who's now drifting to the wide area. Then in Chelsea's low block in this instance, we see them go with a 5-3-2, giving them good cover and use of their cover shadows to block any central passes and limit the amount of space they have in behind, as well as giving them security when the ball is in crossing positions. Also gives them good transition with two front players, with the ability to then run in behind as soon as they win the ball. Now for the last picture, we have Trent Alexander-Arnold on the ball against Chelsea's low block, with their back four with a very clear approach. James Milner staying more central in this situation, dropping deeper alongside Fabinho. And this is where the goal happened early on in the game. Jordan Henderson drifts out wide, creating a duel with Mo Salah. And this stretches the back five across the field for Chelsea. And in this instance, we have the defenders when they face up with their hips towards the ball and they watch the ball. This allows Mo Salah to make this blindside run undetected and into this advanced space where he's able to then get on the ball and score the goal. And we have our other players from Chelsea occupying central roles and limiting the ability Liverpool have in these central areas, forcing then Liverpool to create this situation with Mo Salah running behind, creating the chance for him to score the goal. That's going to wrap up the analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.